It's possible that you're sitting there saying, I've heard it all before. An ADB talk where somebody gives me 1,000 commands I'll never use again and disappears off to the ether. Nobody called me out on it. Okay, it doesn't matter. This is not going to be like that. But as I said, I want to focus on the practicality. Ways that you can use ADB commands in your Android day-to-day workflow to make it better. And also, I want to pass off a little basic terminal/bash knowledge to combine together to make you an ADB wizard. Now, for those of you, for those of you who grew up the same time I did, you're seeing that GIF and there's an audio track in your head going da 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 da. Oh, we're in. Hello, Droidcon Italy. Hello. Hey. Bless you. Thank you for your patience. And hello, Droidcon Italy online. Yes, I see you. Yes, Greg, I'm talking to you, Greg. You, Greg. Yeah. Have a great Droidcon. Okay. Hello. I was going to use that terrible Italian joke to start off with, so we'll just skip straight past that. Practical ADB to enhance your life. Ooh, what a clickbaity title. I'm going to try my very best to deliver on some of the promises of said title. Hopefully, you'll learn a little something from this talk. Quick raise of hands. Raise your hands if you use ADB from the terminal often. Daily, weekly, yearly. Okay, cool. Couple of people, that's nice. Raise your hands if you think that ADB is a genuinely useful tool to your day-to-day Android development. Okay, still good people, good. Okay, if you were somebody that raised your hand, I'm going to try my very best to show you maybe new, quirkier ways of using ADB that's very sort of practical. I really want to focus on the practical versions of ADB to enhance your day-to-day workflow. And for those of you who didn't raise your hands, I'm hoping to turn you into a person that raises their hand next time. Good. Who am I? I am an egotistical maniac, as you can tell by the massive, well, medium-sized pictures of me on the screen there. My name is Ben Kadel, and I'm a principal platform engineer for Android at a company called Babel in Berlin. We make a language learning app. Also, I am very traditionally a person that moves around on stage, but today I have to stay here. So if you see me starting to creep over here, I need somebody to like full on be like, Ben, get back there! I'll be like, okay, oh, sorry, yeah, back in my cage. When I'm not doing Android-y things, I love Git, as I said, the terminal and bash, that kind of stuff. And selfish plug, this will happen a lot. I do have my very own YouTube channel where I do very stupid dev codey tutorial things with a twist. So if you enjoy this nonsense, maybe check that out. Only if you want to. It's possible that you're sitting there saying, I've heard it all before. An ADB talk where somebody gives me 1,000 commands I'll never use again and disappears off to the ether. That was a test. Nobody called me out on it. Okay, doesn't matter. Good to know. This is not going to be like that. First of all, thank you for trusting me with your time. I appreciate that. But as I said, I want to focus on the practicality. Ways that you can use ADB commands in your Android day-to-day workflow to make it better. And also, I want to pass off a little basic terminal/bash knowledge to combine together to make you an ADB wizard. Now, for those of you, for those of you who grew up the same time I did, you're seeing that GIF and there's an audio track in your head going da 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 da. Okay. And for those of you who didn't, it's too late to escape. Good. Yes. Gandalf Europop head nod 10-hour remix. You won't regret it. This is very much going to be I show you the door kind of talk, and you must yourself walk through it. Yes, I'm going to talk about a couple of very thin, deep slices of ADB, give you the basics, how to use it. But my real hope is very cheesy, but it's hopefully to inspire you to see what is possible and for you to go, oh, I didn't know that was possible. Maybe I can do this thing with ADB. And that's the idea. So everything you see in the slide deck will be in this magical Linktree link. If you forget everything else, just remember Linktree B Kadel. That's Ben Kadel, Linktree. And that QR code takes you to that Linktree URL, I promise. And the first link in the Linktree is to this slide. So feel free to take photos of the slides or me and my sexy. That was another mini test. Everybody failed again. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, you can get the slides afterwards, so don't panic. Here's the agenda. Very quick. I'm wasting time. We're going to do a quick introduction to what ADB is. It's not supposed to be an introduction to talk, but I do want us all to be on the same level. Then there's going to be 3 big main chapters about one very tiny focused area of ADB, and we're going to talk about some fun things there. And then it wouldn't be an ADB talk without a miscellaneous category at the end where I just throw some weird-ass commands at you to finish us all off. So, ADB. or Android Debug Bridge, the very first thing to know is that throughout the internet, there is zero consensus about what the logo should be for ADB. So I used all of them. ADB, of course, thank you. ADB, of course, lets your computer and your device communicate to one another. It can do a whole range of things, file transfers, shelling into, blah, 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 loads of things. Hopefully you'll see some more in the slides. It's included as part of the Android SDK in the platform tools directory if you're looking for the executable. And of course, you can install ADB without the need to have Android Studio on your machine. However, hopefully this is somewhat obvious, Android Studio uses ADB under the hood all over the place. Okay, cool. We're all on the same page. Here's the usual suspects, and by usual suspects, I mean the boring, basic, vanilla ADB commands you've probably seen 1,000 times over. We're not going to go anywhere near them. We have to go deeper. However, if you're like, oh, ADB, I like those letters in that order, what do they mean? Well, then I do, of course, selfish plug, have a talk on my YouTube channel with an introduction to ADB, installation and developer settings, yada, yada, yada. Go check that out if you're a beginner to ADB. We use ADB all the time, whether we know it or not, but I personally believe it's highly underutilized and underappreciated for what we could do with it. We could do so much more with it. However, I am not the authority on ADB. I'm simply an idiot with a stage and a microphone. Silly Droidcon Italy. However, there are many, many more cleverer peoples out there than I is, and here's just a few articles and videos by some fantastic people, some of which are even involved in the ADB project, so they're developing ADB. They talk about some of the context of it, under the hood, how it works, and some of the history of it. So if you want to get a bit deeper, check some of those links out. Again, links in the link tree. As the great Alice Merton once said, I got no roots on my horn. I only know the first words. It's a really stupid way of me basically saying that everything you see in this slide deck has been done on an unrooted device. Everything could have been made 10 times easier on a rooted device, but I'm a lunatic. Also, our production devices, these physical bad boys, when we get them, they come with root access disabled by default. You can, of course, root your device. But did you know emulators, by default, come with root access enabled? So if you want to try something rooty, try an emulator. Okay, chapter 1, automated input flows. For each of these big main chapters, I said there's 3 of them, we're going to do like a problem statement, like oh, we're Android developers and this thing sucks. And then we're going to do like oh, here's ADB. What could we do to solve this problem? Okay, so like a carrot and a stick kind of thing. It's not the correct analogy, but there you go. So here's our problem statement for this first chapter. Often as developers, we have mundane, boring tasks that we have to perform regularly in order to progress our development. Maybe something that could be automated. It takes time and effort. Okay? Here's the idea of how we could solve this with ADB. Maybe we could use ADB to create a fast, reliable tool, maybe a script, that will automatically do one of these mundane flows for me. For example, logging into my app. Maybe I have to do that every day. Maybe I have to do that every new install if I've done it badly. Whatever it is, let's see if we can get ADB to log me in without me even touching the device. Ooh, carrot deployed. Look, man, no hands. ADB can send input events to the device. Hopefully you're aware of that. All kinds of events. Taps, licks, clicks, headbutts, all kinds of crazy events you can send from your computer to ADB. Here's what the ADB command for input looks like. It starts, whenever you see this notation, by the way, this is me doing like oh, you can put this, you can copy and paste this straight into the terminal, or this is the annotation for ADB commands. So ADB, the magic word shell, which we're going to come back to later. I want you all to take a mental post-it note, put it in a shell for later. We're going to come back to the word shell. Then the word input, because we're doing some sort of input. And then what input you want to do. For example, if I wanted to do a tap and simulate as though the user had pressed X 100 coordinates and Y 100 coordinates with their finger, that would be it, tap 100, 100. We've seen taps. We can do swipes. We just give it a starting X and Y coordinate, an ending X and Y coordinate, and a duration that it takes to get from start to end. This is also how we do long presses. We just don't change the end coordinates. Exciting. There's text, as though the keyboard's popped up and someone's typed something. There's hard and soft key events. For example, this one's like the home button. Again, links in the link tree to learn more about all these different types of tap events. But let's go back to our use case. We wanted to create like this automated login flow. So how are we going to do that? Let's start right at the basics. We need to find somehow a UI element on screen and maybe tap it or bring it into our script or our tool. So let's take this really rudimentary login screen there. It's not actually a login screen. I lied to you. It's something else, but let's pretend it is. Imagine that submit button there. I want to be able to tap it automatically. So how can I find the X and Y coordinates there? Well, I pick up the phone and I try tap 100, 100 and see if it tapped. It didn't. 200, 100. Did it tap? 300, 100? No, this is awful. There's a better way. There's a better way. We can open the developer settings on the phone, and there's this pointer location option. When you toggle it on, you get this interactive crosshair that follows your finger, and right at the top of the screen, there's this bar that updates as well with X and Y coordinates for your current finger location. Huzzah! So you move your finger over the submit button with this enabled, you see the X and Y, and you're like, got it, thanks. There's a problem. I had to touch the phone in order to turn on the pointer locations, and I don't like touching phones. Gross. So there is an ADB command for this, and there's an ADB command to mess around with a bunch of different system settings and developer settings. This one is the 1 for pointer location. I won't bother reading it out. 1 turns it on, 0 turns it off. Hooray, laziness. But wait, still a problem. That's a long-ass command, and I hate typing. So I've set up a bash alias on my machine, and if you don't know what an alias is, it's basically as though I've given this long-ass nasty command a little cute nickname. I've said, instead of saying ADB Shell settings put system, blah, 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 it's now PL and enter, and it turns it on. Or PL and off, excuse me, to turn it off. Ooh, laziness is always the winner. Okay, so we've found now that we can get an individual UI element on the screen, it's X and Y. Okay, but what happens when we've got multiple screens that go into our flow? For example, on the Babel app, when you log in, you have to click a bunch of things and type a bunch of things. We need something a bit more. So I'm going to give you 3 options now, and they progressively get better and better. Each of them will be building on a bash script. Now, please don't worry if you don't know what that is. It's totally fine. It's just a plain text file that contains terminal command or bash command, one after the other, and it runs one after the other, right? So here in this simple file, you can see I've done a bunch of tap events with hard-coded X and Y values, nothing interesting there. And between each event, I've done a sleep of 1. That's just, hey, wait for 1 second, let the next screen load. So you can see we're going from screen to screen to screen. I open the terminal, I trigger login.sh and trigger the script, and it works, and it's fine. Until it just doesn't. Because the script that I just showed you works on my Pixel 6, but as soon as it's not a Pixel 6 anymore and I plug in a Pixel 2 for some reason, all of those hard-coded X and Y values that I've got in that script no longer point to the same place, and my login script falls down. Can I get a, oh, marvelous. You're all wonderful, never change. So we need something better, okay? We need a responsive or dynamic way to find these coordinates. And I bring you to option 2. We're getting better and better. I'd like to introduce you to a tool called UI Automator. Now, it's actually used for UI testing. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole because we'll be here forever. But if you use the command ADB Shell, UI Automator, and dump, what that does is it takes a sort of snapshot of your screen in its current visual state and dumps that into an XML output, an XML file of your visual current state. So that screen on the right, I don't know if you can see that, but there's a gray button that says maybe later. And inside of that XML dump, there's a text that says maybe later. Could that be my button? Ooh. We can use tools like grep, cut, and sed to programmatically go through that XML output, find my button by its text, and then find this bounds attribute that's also there as well. Those are rectangle bounds, rect bounds. So very simply, from top left, it's the, from the left side, words. It's the X and Y position of the top left corner of the rectangle, followed by the width, followed by the height. So with a very simple bit of maths as well, we can find the dead center of that rectangle, which gives me an X and Y value. And for those of you who are still with me, you're like, oh shit, then he can do tap with it. Yes, he can. So it's very theoretical. I will talk implementation a bit, don't worry. But for now, we found a responsive way of doing that. Just a quick side note. I don't know, I'm being weird. When we do the ADB Shell UI Automated dump command, by default, it dumps that XML onto a file on the device. I mean on the phone, not the computer that I'm running the script on, so that sucks. So we need to add another step. Maybe I use the ADB pull command to say, hey, let me pull down the file, let me take the file from the phone onto the host machine, but that's 2 commands where 1 would have sufficed. With a very simple tweak to our original command, we can, instead of dumping to a file on the device, we can dump the output of dump straight back to me on my screen in front of me on my teletypewriter. And all we did was change the exec out bit. Instead of shell, it's exec out. And again, for now, I just want you to take a mental post-it note. Mental post-it note, stick it in the corners next to the ADB Shell post-it note. We're going to come back to that later. And of course, the dev TTY thing at the end, we'll talk about that too. And in the bottom bit, the slightly alphaed out green there is how you can capture that dump output in a script, and then you can start parsing it or messing with it. Okay, cool, back to option 2. So theoretically, we have made this bash function called getCoords. It takes one string of the element that we're trying to find. It does the UI automated dump. It passes through it. It finds the bounds. It gives us an X and Y for me to tap. And now it is responsive, dynamic. We trigger it again, and it works. And it's better now. This time, it doesn't matter what phone's plugged in. But there's still one problem. UI automator dump is slow as hell. It is really slow. Now, I'm being very overdramatic. Slow as hell means it's like 2 or 3 seconds per dump. But 2 or 3 seconds! It's like a lifetime. Especially when you've got multiple screens, and each screen, every time the UI changes, you have to do a new dump. You do not want to use that long-ass script. So, of course, I am a giving person. So I give you option 3, the holy grail, the final, the best choice. UI automator 2. Now, this actually... I know, right? Geniuses came up with this name. UI Automator 2 actually has nothing to do with ADB or Android. It's just a Python wrapper for the original vanilla UI Automator, but they do some voodoo under the hood to make the responses rapido. You can install it with the Python package manager pip, and then in our theoretical code, in our getCoords function, wherever you use the vanilla UI Automator, you can change it and invoke this copy and pastable Python snippet, invoking UI Automator 2's dump instead, and your responses will be fast and better and good. Now, I've talked very theoretically, and I could just throw code up on the screen here, but that's not going to help anyone. So instead, I want to point you back to the link tree. There is a gist that contains the exact code for this getCoords function. I called it tap node if exists, because it would have made way too much sense to call it getCoords. So if you want to see how that implementation is done, you know, either just to sort of understand it a bit more or take it for some other use case, then please check it out, tap node if exists. Now, when I plug my phone in and I trigger my script, this has not been sped up. This is me logging into the Babel app without my hands. You can see it's going for it, basically, proving it. It's a looping GIF, so it might not have started at the start. Anyway, it works is what I'm trying to say. But we can still do one better here. This is a little extra. Currently, we're triggering our script by having the terminal open and typing login.sh and enter. I'm lazy, remember? So we can do better. We could set up a keyboard shortcut to trigger this script. And we can do that using a tool called Automator, not to be confused with UI Automator or UI Automator 2. Automator is a tool that's installed on all of your Mac machines. And if you have a Windows machine, you have my permission to fall asleep for the next 30 seconds. I'll wake you up. The next 2 slides are just a visual guide of how to do this. I'll just quickly talk on the first one. We need to set up a service with Automator. We want to create an Apple script that points right back at our bash script that we've created. Nothing more. Now we have a service that we can trigger from all manner of places in our Mac. The next, we're just going into the system preferences, creating a keyboard shortcut, and under the general section are all of my services that I created with Automator. You can see I've got a couple: clear Babel, login Babel, start Babel, blah Babel, right? You set a keyboard shortcut, and then without touching the phone, the app installs, and it logs in for you. I didn't need to do anything. I'm doing something else. I'm basically just sitting at my desk the whole time going, Nice. Okay, good. That was chapter 1. That was the big long one. They're getting a bit smaller and more intense now. Chapter 2, dump sys. Get all the infos. Here's our problem statement. Often, we can't be exactly sure what's really happening on the device behind the scenes. Like, we think we know because we coded it, but I thought I inflated a fragment and I'm not seeing anything on the screen. Or I thought I set an alarm, but nothing went off at the right time. Did I do those things? Let's use a tool called dumpsys to quickly get truthful, useful information about all manner of things, specifically for our use case about a running app, and I'll explain why. And I said, hey, what's going on? Sorry, audio guy. That's a really stupid way. Wait, HeMan, master of the universe. No, I don't know how to say this. Yeah, it's a really stupid way of basically me saying that dumpsys is like HeMan, master of the universe, asking the Android operating system what's going on. You're with me. It's fine. Dumpsys is an amazing tool that provides diagnostic output for all system services running on the device. Now, that's a huge ballpark to play in, but the important thing is it tells you the truth, and a lot of it. About all manner of things. Here's just a quick list of some of the things it tells you about. Here's the ADB command to trigger dumpsys. ADB Shell again. The word dumpsys, because we're triggering dumpsys, and then the service that you want to find out information about. For example, if I want to find out all of the alarms that are set on the device, I use alarm, and it tells me all of the alarms for when they'll go off and the pending intent. I could ask about battery information. Is it charging? What's the percentage? I could ask about specific packages. Hey, there's a package ID. Tell me the version numbers and permissions and stuff. Or background scheduled jobs, and this one's really useful if you work with Work Manager at all. You can see which jobs are scheduled and for what constraints they will trigger. Cool. But there's one service that I want to focus on in this one, and it's called the activity service. And it tells us information about a running app, and we pass it a package ID. It tells us all manner of things, like the task that encapsulates the app, the activities that are active and running, the fragments that are active and running, the fragment transactions that have happened, the view hierarchy, like if it's an item view inside of a list view, the view states, if it's paused, presumed, or stopped, or the object references, so I can tell if it's the same object as it was before, and many, many more things. And the best part is it's super easy to read. So, good, we'll move on. No, it's an absolute nightmare, but it is really useful because it is the truth, and there's a lot of really useful information in there. But it's a nightmare to read at a pinch. So, I want to do two things. One, I want to give you a very quick introduction on the structure of what you just saw, so that if you want to try and read it and understand it yourselves, you at least have somewhere to start. And then two, I want to give you some tools that just do it easier for you. So, option one. This is the structure of what you just saw, roughly. This is super, like, basic, watered down version. Indentation is everything in the dumpsys output. Indentation is everything. It denotes child-parent relationship. So here in this example of how the structure output would look, we've got a task that encapsulates everything. You get some information there. Then you have multiple activity blocks with their own view hierarchy dumps, with their fragments and their fragment managers and the child fragment managers all the way down hierarchically, and of course backstack information. Now that's super quick and is just in case you want to try and do it yourself. That's fine. However, there is a tool called EasyDumps, which is essentially a glorified dumpsys parser. It turns this nasty output into this, propagating the information that, in my opinion, is sort of useful. You can see that I can immediately see which activity is active. I can see the fragment hierarchy and which fragments I'm looking at with their object references and class references. Nice. And that's all the information been extracted from dumpsys. For me, I find it really useful. I do a lot of code reviews for hiring, like code challenges. So when I get a candidate's challenge, I'll look at it and I'll immediately run EasyDumps to see what's happening under the hood. Also, it's great for diagnosing. That example I did earlier about fragments not being visible, like, hey, EasyDumps, did I actually inflate a fragment? And EasyDumps is like, no, get a different job. So it's useful is what I'm trying to say, at least it is for me. And the last thing I want to say, and this is just another sort of mental pin for later, I just want to say FZF, because EasyDumps uses inside of it a tool called FZF, and I just wanted to say it now so that later when we talk about it, you'll be like, oh, he said that thing earlier, marvelous. So FZF, we're going to come back later. However, if you hate your precious time or hate tools, then here's a way that you can just quickly extract little bits of output that you might be interested in from dumpsys using a tool called grep. Grep is installed on all your machines. You will pipe the output from dumpsys, so you give the output over to grep, and grep is just a string searcher. So you say, hey, grep, is this string there? And grep will be like, no, or yes, here it is. So for example, we can ask for all of the activities from the output, and it will quickly tell us that. We could ask for specific view elements, and it will give us that from the view hierarchy dump. But the reason I'm telling you this, aside from showing you that grep exists, is that with grep, you can append one of three letters, A, B, or C, and it will change your output ever so slightly to make it more useful. So if you give it -A with X, with a number behind it, it will give you the matching line that matches your search and X amount of lines after, A, after. Okay, so you're getting the matching line and some more stuff. B is before, so the matching line and lines before, and C is both, A plus B or context, both above and below. Now this is really useful because of that activity example right there. If you wanted to find the activities, you'd use that. But if you also wanted to see the state the activity's in, if it's paused, resumes, or stopped, that's 2 lines beneath that line. So you use -A and 2, and you also get that information for free. Nice! Cool. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to introduce you to a very quick selfie break, brought to you by Budweiser. No, I have no idea. I always forget to do this, and this crowd is amazing, so if you don't mind, I'm going to take a selfie. Hide your faces if you don't want to be in it. Pull a silly face, whatever. Here we go, 3, 2, 1. Selfie, 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 selfie. Good, okay. All right, you lot, come on. Focus up, please. Goodness. Chapter 3. What does your app know? Similar to chapter 2, we can't exactly be sure what data is stored locally on our device. Like, again, we think we know because we sort of coded it, but we want to be sure, right? And what about if we wanted to change that data without making a code change? So, why don't we use ADB to help us create a tool that maybe lets us see the internal stored data and edit it so we can see what happens? Ooh. I'm talking about, by the way, when we write to our app's internal storage. In order to query that information, we often have to intercept it as it's being transacted. Maybe we're adding breakpoints or adding print lines. Whatever it is, it's some amount of effort to find out the information. And the information that I'm talking about, just to be really clear, things like shared preferences, files that are written on device, or database contents. And as I said, Android Studio has now a really nice database inspector, so maybe ignore that last one. However, information on the device. In order to describe this topic well, I have to take a step back, and we have to now finally pull the shell token out of the cupboard. I don't know. And we now have to address the shell. Yeah, I know. People are like, what the hell's going on here? This is a professional? Oh, my God. So shell. What is shell? If I use ADB Shell just on its own without anything else, what I will get is a lingering interactive prompt. It will be as though I have stepped from my machine's terminal and stepped into the device over here. Now I'm doing commands inside the phone, inside the world of the phone, and when I'm ready, I can exit and step back to my terminal over here. But then we saw ADB Shell with some commands after it. What's the difference? Well, oh no! Oh my goodness. Technical difficulties. Where the hell's my tab? Oh, there it is. Okay, here we go. Carry on. ADB Shell without anything after it will give you that lingering interactive prompt, as I said. But ADB Shell with a command after it will trigger that command as though it's within the context of the device. And actually, those commands, those tools that come after ADB Shell, they're actually things that are installed on here as opposed to part of like ADB. So that's the slight difference. But we talked about exec out as well. Let's take that thing out there. Here, open your mouth. You, open your mouth. Here. Marvelous. Round of applause for that guy. He ate exec out. Crazy. So what's the difference between ADB Shell and ADB exec out? Well, let me tell you. Because remember, we had that UI automated dump command, and just by changing like one of the pieces, we were able to change where the output went. So with ADB Shell, and the dump command, we can pass it a file name. Now, I'm not very good at naming things, so I just called the file. And when we use shell dump, it will dump the file onto the device. But as soon as we change just that shell to exec out, it dumps the exact same thing onto our host machine. And you can think of exec out as though it's run the command and picked up all the nice output and sort of carried it over and dumped it into the context of our machine. Now, that's highly oversimplified, but it's a nice way to start. And then that dev tty thing, that's a Unixy thing. That's a dev file that whenever you write to it, it will basically echo what you've written right back at you, because the file stands for teletypewriter, TTY. So when you write to that or you dump to that file, it will, instead of sort of saving it on device as a file, it'll just spit it right back out to you in your face in your terminal. Nice. Okay, back to the whole point that we're trying to do, find the information inside of the phone. We're going to use ADB Shell, and now we're inside of our device. We're getting closer. I'm going to CD into the data directory where all the apps store their internal storage, and I'm going to ls and, permission denied. Okay, don't ask me how I know this, but I know the absolute full path of my app's internal storage. We'll just CD straight into there, and permission denied again. Although this seems like a pain in the ass, this is a good thing. It would be a terrifying world if any Joe Blogs or random app could look at your app's internal storage or, God forbid, edit it. That'd be crazy. But for us, the original app authors, we can work around this system a little bit. We can use a command called runAs and pass it the package ID of our debuggable app. That's really important, our debuggable app. As soon as we do that, we're saying to the system, hey, system, pretend I'm this app for a second. Let me see the phone through the eyes of the app. And it'll be like, yo, you the app now. And you'll immediately, I have no idea. You'll immediately transfer into your app's internal storage folder. You'll become a different user temporarily, and you'll be able to see the folders that make up your app's internal storage. There they are. Cache, databases, files, no backup. These are your app's internal storage. If ever you've written a file to your app's internal storage, you'll have used the context.filesdir to get a path. And that is the path. It points to that files folder right there. So we're seeing our app's internal storage. Ooh, nice. There's the shared preference folder. Let's delve into that. Let's try and see some shared preferences. Shared preferences are stored in XML files. So whilst we're running as our app, we can cat out one of those XML files. And cat is just dump the output to me on screen. And bang, there's some shared preferences. I'm seeing key value pairs. Email, Ben at Ben, last login, some timestamp. But Ben, you said maybe we could change these values and see what happens. Well, yes, brace yourself because it's about to get weird. So we can see the values. Let's try changing them. The first thing I have to tell you, I'm really sorry, is that on an unrooted device, you have no access to a decent text editor like Vim, Vi, Nano, Ed, or if you're a monster, Emacs. The other problem is that we can't just pull the file down to our host machine, change it, and push it back up because permissions. But with a clever combination of run as and a program called sed, we can bypass this issue as well. Sed is a stream editor. It takes one form of input, does some manipulation, some sed program on it, and spits out how it would look. For example, hello world, and then if the sed program was change all the E's to the A's, it'd be hello world in a German accent. By default, sed only shows you how it would look. It doesn't overwrite the file, or it doesn't overwrite the inputting stream. It just says this is how it would look. But we can go crazy mode and use -i to say in place, to say yes, yes, sed. I'm crazy. Wait, let me look at the camera. I'm crazy. I want you to overwrite that file. Do it. Yeah. So whilst we're running as, we can use sed with the -i flag, pass in right at the end there our shared preference file, and pass in that sed program, the thing in single quotes. I'm not going to go into sed programs. That's a huge world, but really interesting world. This sed program basically just says replace every instance of Ben with the word Tim. We run this. Ben at Ben email becomes Tim at Tim email, and we've successfully changed something on the phone. Yeah, you're probably a little deflated because that sucked. That was a lot. And, in fact, that sed program is horrendously dangerous because what if Ben appears somewhere else in the shared preference files? Then we've likely corrupted it or damaged it, whatever. Anyway, I just wanted to show you that it's possible and now give you some tools. The first one is a GitHub repository called prefedit, which gives you like an interactive terminal preference editor. Nice. But the second one is the one that I like. It's called edit pref files, and it's a gist. And with that, what it does is it does that thing that I said you couldn't do. It pulls down the file to your host machine, lets you change it to your heart's content, and then with a bit of fancy, clever sed footwork, re-uploads it with the correct permissions back into your phone. Very cool. Anyway, again, I'm not trying to shill my own stuff. I'm simply saying these exist. Please, if you're interested, check out how the implementation was so that maybe you can do something with your own ideas instead. Okay? Cool. Whew, we're almost there, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, I'm good for time as well, thank God. We're now at the miscellaneous category bit, the bit where it's like, here's some weird the weird ADB commands that I couldn't categorize. Okay, I've got 4, each is about 2 minutes, so we should hit time pretty perfectly. Let's go. FZF. Remember I talked about that thing earlier? Who's excited? Yeah, that guy's excited. Thanks. FZF has nothing to do with Android or ADB. It's actually a terminal tool. It's a command line fuzzy finder. What the hell does that mean? You can give FZF a multi-line string input. For example, I give it hat, new line, bat, new line, whatever, right? I pass that to FZF, and then the FZF command goes crazy, and it inflates this sort of rudimentary GUI that I can use my arrow keys to go through and select. Each of the lines has been broken down into its own option. Or I can start to type, and it will autocomplete, or fuzzy find for me. When I hit enter on one or more of the options, the output of the FZF command is the selected options. That's cool, and if I've piqued your interest, then again, video on my YouTube channel, sorry, plugs. But if I've piqued your interest, then maybe this will pique it even further. Let's go back to our Android ADB context. Anywhere that you have a list of things and you need to select one or more of those things, immediately in your brain go, FZF, and Kadel, FZF, right? Because, let me give you an example. List of devices. Remember, when we've got more than one device plugged in and we do an ADB command, it will complain. It'll be like, I don't know which device to do it on. How about instead of it complaining, we plug FZF straight into that system with this reusable copy and pastable code, and instead of complaining, it instead says, yo, idiot, you got 2 devices, pick one and I'll carry on. That's one example. Or maybe we use Package Manager, PM, to list the third-party apps that are installed on the phone, and we pass that list to FZF, we select one or more, and then we do whatever we want with that list. Maybe we uninstall all of those apps that we have selected, or we clear the cache or something of all of those apps. Your imagination is your limit here, but FZF for lists, amazing. Number 2. Screen size manipulation. This is a weird one. There's ADB Shell WM, window manager, and size. When we just do that command, it will report back to us the physical resolution of our phone. What about if I give it a new resolution? 480 by 800. In front of your eyes, your phone, your actual phone, will change and the screen will morph to match the new constraints on your emulator or on your phone. Nice. There's also the density command as well. Again, without anything extra, it reports back to you the density of your device. Let's give it a new density. Give it the density 80 maybe, and again, it will now morph your screen in front of you to match all of those constraints. And forever, your phone is now broken. I'm very sorry. No, I'm just kidding. There's a reset command that puts it all the way back to 1. Why am I telling you this? Well, if you need to test your app on a very specific screen configuration and you don't have access to it, and you're lazy like me and can't be bothered to set up an emulator, because that'd probably be the preferred route, then you can find, oh, hey, a Pixel 2 has this resolution by this DPI, plug those values in, and bang, you very quickly got what a Pixel 2 would look like with your app. Interesting, maybe. This one is a bit of a strange bespoke one, but I find this really useful, so maybe you might too. And this is starting an app without knowing the activity. What am I on about? We can use Activity Manager, or AM, to start an activity, but we need to pass it the package ID and the activity class reference of the activity we want to start. But what if we don't know the activity because we're not the original authors of the app? Maybe we're opening another app automatically. We can't just pass it package because AM will complain and be like, I don't know what to do. So we can use a tool that was never supposed to be used for this use case to fix this problem. And I'm talking about ADB Monkey. ADB Monkey is an application stress testing tool, and we'll come back to that in just a moment. But we can use Monkey to do this exact use case. With -p, we pass it a package, and then we just say how many events we want to trigger. 1. We just want the app to open, and it will open any app on your phone as long as you give it the package ID. Nice. But whilst we're here, let's talk about ADB Monkey. It's as though, when you run this command, you've passed your phone and your app to an actual monkey here, and the monkey has just been going and does all sorts of crazy random input that you would never expect your user to do. Oh, the user clicked just 2 pixels left of the X button 54 times in a row and our app fell down. Why? But it's really useful to find out if your app can survive the barrage of the monkey. Here in this command, I pass it a seed value, so that if indeed my app does fall down for some reason, I can try and fix the problem and then run the exact same crazy input events. And of course, here I've given it 5,000 random crazy events, and it will just go bananas on, pardon the pun. Oh. Good one, Ben. Thanks, Ben. It will just go bananas on your phone, and you can see if your app can withstand it. Try it. It's very, very interesting. And the last one, here we go, we're almost there. It's called permission testing. This is a terrible title. It's meant to be like answering permission questions from your terminal. We often have these runtime permission dialogues like, hey, can I post notifications? And the user has to go yes or no. We can answer those questions from the terminal without even touching the device. We can use package manager and grant, passing the package ID and the full name of the permission. In this case, it would be android.permission.postNotifications. And that says, yes, yes, you can do that, allow. Or you can do revoke, and you say, no, no, disallow, not okay. And then the one that I think is the most important one here is cleaning up, clearing away any previous answer given to that question, as though the user has not had that dialogue presented to them before. So you can run that, rerun your app, and see if there's something nefarious going on, or if they are indeed queried again. Interesting. Okay, that's it. I have a couple of quick last little bits to wrap up with. There was so much I wanted to talk about here. The world of ADB is huge and massive, and hopefully I've inspired you to at least go and check it out a bit further. Here's some honorable mentions of things I want to mention. Top left, screen copy is a really wonderful way to mirror your physical device's screen onto your desktop screen. I use it all the time for like presentations. JQ is a terminal JSON parser, really, really useful. We've got a couple of GUI ADB tools for like the Mac and so on, and we've got some great ADB tools for like IDEs and so on. So those things, again, links to even all of those things as well in the link tree. Please check it out. Again, there's the link to the link tree. Thank you so much for your time. There's my socials. And if for any reason, any of you like my ugly face, or perhaps you're a fan of the YouTube channel, then I do have a couple of Ben Kadel stickers. And now the all-time limited edition Ben Kadel pins, because pins are all the rage this year. So I've got some pins. There's not many of them. Feel free to come and ask me for one before supply runs out. Thank you so much for your time. You've been a wonderful audience. Thank you.